Who is the Antichrist, and where will he come from? I will reveal a date on an ancient clay tablet and a hidden number in various biblical prophecies that point to the exact day a world leader would appear. Then I will reveal the man who rose to power on that day and how he's connected to the Antichrist and the end times. Babylon, when you see this evidence, you will realize that almost everyone is looking for the Antichrist in the wrong place. In the book of Revelation, we find a description of two men who will control the world in the end times. The first man is called the Beast. He will wage war and gain control over the entire world. The second man is called the False Prophet, and he will perform miracles, forcing everyone to accept the mark of the beast. Which of these two men is the Antichrist? The Bible actually says there are many Antichrists, and the word Antichrist has two parts, anti and Christ. Anti can mean against or in place of, and Christ means the anointed one, which could refer to Jesus Christ or another anointed person, such as a king or priest. Since these two men will be working against Jesus Christ, both will be antichrists. However, the false prophet will direct people to worship the world ruler, who is called the Beast, as if he were God. This world ruler will act as a substitute Christ, claiming to have come to save the world, just as Hitler saw himself as Germany's savior. So when people talk about the Antichrist, they are usually referring to this man who will rule the world. Where will this world ruler come from, and when will he appear? We find a clue about this ruler's identity in the 50th chapter of Jeremiah. In this prophecy, the man who will rule the world in the end times is called Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon over 2,000 years ago, and at that time Babylon was the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. But a few decades after Nebuchadnezzar's death, the Babylonian Empire was conquered. Eventually, the city of Babylon was abandoned and disappeared, but the Bible uses Nebuchadnezzar and his great Babylonian Empire as a symbol or metaphor for another leader and empire that will control the world in the end times. In the book of Revelation, we find a description of these end times. Babylon, which will reign over the kings of the earth in the end times, represents the political, economic, and religious power that will dominate the world shortly before the return of Jesus Christ, and the man called the Beast, or the Antichrist, will be the leader of these end times. Babylon. To understand exactly where this end times Babylon will be located and when it will appear here, we can turn to an enigmatic prophecy in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 4 describes a dream that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of ancient Babylon, had. In his dream, he saw a tall tree that provided shade and food for all the birds and animals in the world. Then the tree was cut down, and a band of iron and bronze was placed around the stump for a period of 7 times. When Nebuchadnezzar asked Daniel to reveal the meaning of the dream, Daniel explained that the tree represented the king, who would lose his sanity and wander like an animal. But after a period of 7 times, he would regain his sanity and return to rule Babylon. The chapter goes on to explain that a year later this prophecy was fulfilled exactly as Daniel had explained. King Nebuchadnezzar lost his sanity for a time and later returned to rule the Babylonian Empire. At first glance, this prophecy seems to be only about King Nebuchadnezzar. However, many prophecies in the Bible predict 2 separate events. The first fulfillment of the prophecy is only a type of foreshadowing that provides clues about a second, greater fulfillment. Thus, we can use the first fulfillment of this dream as a guide to understanding the second fulfillment in the first fulfillment. The tree represented King Nebuchadnezzar. In the second fulfillment, the tree could represent another ruler or even the kingdom of Babylon itself. As in biblical prophecies, the king often represents his kingdom in the first fulfillment. Babylon was left without a ruler 7 times in the second fulfillment. Babylon would also be without a ruler for 7 times, but what does 7 times mean? You can find the answer by comparing 2 passages in the book of Revelation. Revelation 12 verse 14 mentions a period described as a times and half a time, which means 1 time plus 2 times plus half a time, totaling 3 and 1/2 times. Then look at Revelation 11 verse 3, and you'll find the same time period described as 1,260 days. So we see that 3 and a 2 times equal 1,260 days now. If you take 3 and 1/2 times and double them, you get 7 times. And if you double the number of days as well, you get 2,520 days, going back to the prophecy in Daniel chapter 4. We see that in the first fulfillment, Babylon was without a ruler for 2,520 days, which equals roughly 7 years. In the second fulfillment, Babylon would again be without a ruler for 2,520 days. However, in many biblical prophecies, a day represents a year. For example, in Ezekiel 4, we see that the prophet Ezekiel was instructed to lie on his right side and then on his left side for a certain number of days, with each day representing a year of a future period. Therefore, if a day represents a year, then in the second fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel chapter 4, Babylon could be without a ruler for 2,520 years. This prophecy may thus predict that the kingdom of Babylon would be cut down and be without a ruler for 2,520 years. After that, the band of bronze and iron would be removed, a new ruler would be appointed, and Babylon would start to grow again, eventually ruling the world under the leadership of the beast or the Antichrist. If that is the case, we need to find out exactly when Babylon was conquered and lost its ruler. Then we could calculate the exact day a new leader would be appointed and Babylon would begin to rise again. Returning to the Bible, note that right after Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel 4, the following chapter moves forward in time to describe the fall of the ancient Babylonian Empire in Daniel chapter 5. We see that the rulers of Babylon were hosting a banquet when a hand appeared and wrote a message on the wall. The king and his guests were terrified as they couldn't read the message. So the king summoned Daniel to read and interpret the writing on the wall. The message said, mean, tekel, and parsin. Daniel explained that the writing on the wall meant that the kingdom of Babylon was finished and that God had given it to the Medes and the Persians. But there was also a second numerical message hidden in this inscription. If you have a Bible with footnotes, you may see that these words are explained as units of currency. Min is a minor, which is worth 50 shekels. Pli is a shekel, and parin means divided or halves, referring to half a mina or 25 shekels. If you add these values together, you get 126 shekels, but the shekel was not the smallest unit of currency. The smallest was the gerah, and there were 20 gerahs in a shekel. So if you multiply 126 shekels by 20, you get 2,520 gerahs. Notice that this is the same number we found hidden in Daniel chapter 4. This is a second confirmation that 2,520 years would pass before Babylon would begin to rise again. Returning to the story, while the rulers of Babylon were holding a banquet, the Medes and Persians had already conquered the kingdom and were invading the city of Babylon. That very night, we can find the exact date recorded in the Nabonidus Chronicle, which states on the 14th day Sepa was captured without a battle. Nabonidus fled on the 16th day. Guber, governor of Gudium, and Cyrus's army entered Babylon without a battle. Sepa was captured on the 14th day of the Babylonian month of Tishri in the year 539 BC. 2 days later, Daniel informed the rulers of Babylon that the kingdom had already been given over to the Medes and Persians, and that same night the city of Babylon also fell here from an ancient clay tablet. We have the exact date marking the start of the 25-20-year period during which Babylon would remain without a ruler. It is important to note that the dates in biblical prophecies always use the Hebrew calendar. The month Tishri in the Babylonian calendar corresponds to the month of Tish in the Hebrew calendar. Thus, the city of Sepa fell on the 14th day of Tish in 539 BC, and 2 days later Daniel declared that the kingdom of Babylon had been handed over to the Medes and Persians. So we will begin counting from the 14th day of Tishri in 539 BC, adding 2,520 years. Brings us to the 14th day of Tishri in 1982, which was October 1st on the Roman calendar. On that exact day, the Chancellor of West Germany was suddenly replaced by a man named Helmut Kohl. This did not happen in an election. Instead, the new leader was selected by the German parliament after a constructive vote of no confidence. In other words, government leaders decided to choose a new chancellor without holding an election. This was the only time in German history that a leader came to power in This way was Helmut Kohl's sudden and unexpected rise to power on October 1st, 1982. A second fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel 4. Consider these three facts and decide for yourself. Fact 1, 8 years later, on the exact same day, Helmut Kohl came to power. East and West Germany were reunified under his leadership. This was on October 3rd, 1990, which corresponds to the 14th day of Tishri in the Hebrew calendar. Do you know why East and West Germany were originally divided in the First World War? Germany and its allies conquered a large part of Europe. Then again, in the Second World War, Hitler led Germany to conquer most of Europe. After these two wars, the other world powers did not want Germany to rule Europe again, so they divided the country, dismantled its military, and destroyed many of its factories. But in 1990, Germany was reunified by the man who rose to power precisely on the day the Bible predicted Babylon would start to rise again. Fact 2, Helmut Kohl was the primary advocate for uniting the countries of Eastern and Western Europe into a world power. He was one of the two men who drafted the treaty that founded the European Union, establishing the euro as Europe's common currency and paving the way for Eastern European countries to join the European Union. The prophecy in Daniel chapter 4 indicated that when the band of iron around the stump of Babylon was removed, a new tree would start to grow from the same roots. If you look at history, you will see that Europe's roots go back to Rome, Greece, and ultimately Babylon. In the Bible, in times Babylon is described as a woman riding a beast. You can find the same image of a woman riding a beast on the reverse side of some 2 euro coins, where the woman represents Europe. Helmut Kohl helped unite Europe into a world power, fulfilling the prophecy that a new world power would emerge from the roots of ancient Babylon. Fact 3. Helmut Kohl and his successors established Germany as the leading power in Europe, and are working to make Europe the world's leading power. What are the chances that this sequence of events would begin precisely on the date predicted thousands of years before, since October 1st? 1982, a new world power, a new Babylon has been emerging in Europe, and most people are unaware of what is happening. But what about the Antichrist? Helmut Kohl retired from politics in 2002 and passed away in 2017. He was not the end times Antichrist who will rule the world, but his appointment on the exact day predicted in Daniel chapter 4 helps us understand where the Antichrist will come from. The Bible predicts that a man called the Beast, also known by some as the Antichrist, will rule. The end times Babylon has been growing in Germany and Europe since 1982. Like Hitler, this man may be born outside of Germany, but eventually he will gain control over Germany, Europe, and the entire world. But don't just take my word for it. The Bible warns that there will be many false prophets in the last days. One of these false prophets will be a powerful religious leader who will work alongside the beast. This false prophet will use religion to deceive and control people. The only way to avoid being misled by false prophets is to open the Bible and see what it says for yourself. Therefore, I encourage you to carefully verify all the scriptures and facts mentioned in this video to ensure that every detail is true and accurate. One thing you will find when you verify the scriptures is that the Bible does not specifically say that the beast or the false prophet is the Antichrist, but regardless of which person is the Antichrist, the Bible clearly states that the beast will rule the world with the support of the false prophet. So stay alert for the appearance of these two men in Europe. When they appear, what will they do? How will they transform Europe? And what will happen to the Americas, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East? What role will countries like the United States and Israel, Russia, and India play in end times prophecy? Please leave your opinion on the video's topic in the comments, always respecting others' views. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found this content valuable, please support me by subscribing so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Share this video with family and friends, give it a like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. This helps the video reach more people. Together, we can enlighten more minds and expand our understanding. Thank you for being here, and may God bless you.